Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fat Muscle Project podcast. I'm John Gorman, your host. We've got Mr. Large and in charge, Jace Lopez in the house. Jace, what's going on, man? How are you?
Doing great, John. I'm excited, man. I'm pumped.
Yeah, we've talked about being on a podcast for a while now, and here we are. I believe this is episode 9. We're 9 in, and we've got a really fun Q&A lined up for the day. But before we get to that, before we get to you, I do want to do some real quick housekeeping. For anyone who's still interested, we still have like 2 tickets left for the Fat Muscle Academy. It's in Springfield, Missouri. Check your show notes wherever you're listening to your podcast. Just click on that. I've got a direct link that will take you to all the information. We either got 2 super VIP tickets or 2 general admission. It doesn't matter. 2 ticket spots, male or female. And if you do want that super VIP, you get a backpack that's also a cooler bag. You get supplements in there. You get a notebook for the academy, the seminar series, and you get to train with one of the Fat Muscle coaches. You might even train with Jace because we're getting all that lined up. So with that being said, check out your show notes. We do still have tickets available. It's going to be a blast. This time of year, what we do, Jace, I think sometimes can get lonely because when you're really super into physique enhancement and that this is a coach, it's just nice to be around other like-minded people, whether you're a coach or you're just somebody trying to get into shape. I mean, you go to seminars and conferences all the time, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I try to make one every quarter because the information you get out of it is very applicable. Because if we're just learning things and not applying it, we're just wasting our time, right? So be able to learn from other coaches who've been in the trenches, who have application is key, but also the motivation you get. Like you're excited to coach again. You might have a case that you've been struggling with that you might get one cue to help them, and you're excited to go back to the room and email them. So they're definitely very valuable. And I said one a quarter. Put in your budget of coaching, and it's definitely be worth it and create more value for you as a coach.
100%. And if you're not a coach that's striving to keep learning new things and try new things and meet other people, you're slowly going to fall farther behind those people that are out there striving to always question everything and learn something new. I mean, hell, before this podcast even started, Jace, you and I are sitting here talking, and you gave me some good advice on a blood pressure medication. Even though I'm sitting pretty well here, you had more knowledge on it than I do, obviously, and now I'm going to look into that afterwards. That could be a huge help for me, and if not for me, to some of my clients. So imagine that at scale at one of these conferences, and that's why we do the event that we do. So definitely looking forward to it. Now, before we start this off, I do like to talk about anything cool that's happened to you over the last 2 weeks or anything new that you've learned. But before that, for people who don't know who you are, they're quickly going to find out you've been on multiple podcasts. You're really making a name for yourself. Clients kick ass. I want to talk about how I met you, and then I want you to kind of just get a real quick broad overview of who you are and what you do. I first met you in person at our it was at Elite Physique University, Jason Theobald and I put on in Springfield, Missouri. And I met you and some of your friends, and you had already been recommending Hormone Optimizer and some of our supplements just because you believed in it, and you never approached me about being sponsored. You just believed in the supplements, and you were good to us. And we took note of that over time. And this is, if you're wanting to be a sponsored coach out there, this is probably something for you guys to listen in on real quick. You were already doing everything that we wanted our sponsor coaches to do. So we reached out. I had watched you with your clients. I had watched the content you put out. It was all spot on. And we really have built a team of, I would call them elite coaches in all these different areas. And you were you were in that first 5 type people that we brought on. And we've really built this company around guys like you. So that's how I got to know you. We're really blessed to have you on the team. You were the very first top fat muscle coach. You won that award last year. We're about to have that awards dinner here in about another 10 days. So let me tell you, you're right up there in the mix, but it is tough, man. You've got people on your heels from last time. So it's going to be real interesting. This shook out and it was real close, but we'll see if you repeat. But that's how I know you, man. Tell everybody a little bit more about you and what you do, and you train people in the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, so I'll try to give you the shortened version, but my name is Jace Lopez. I'm 32 years old. I'm from Lafayette, Louisiana. I live here in Youngsville, Louisiana. I started coaching back in 2015. I got my certification, my personal training certification. Back then, online coaching wasn't a big thing. You know that, John. I think you're one of the first pioneers in online coaching, which is awesome. So you really had to start in the gym, which I believe is the best way for most aspiring online coaches. You know, because I always thought if you can't train somebody in person, get results, you probably can't get results online either. You know, so having that real world knowledge, application, and wisdom really does go far. We're communicating online, but I got that certification. Started working at a local gym, and within a year was very successful. Had a full roster. Opened up. Me and my wife opened up our own gym, personal training studio. That next year, we hired on some coaches, and then we actually moved into a bigger gym back in 2019, which is 32,000 square feet. We were running about 8,000. I now have eight coaches under me as inside the gym, and I have 3 online coaches. So I'm pretty busy, just constantly mentoring them and getting them next level, and make sure everybody's nurtured, everybody's a good spot. But also I do lifestyle and competitive coaching also. I have about 80 clients on my roster as my cap. I try to push up so many times. I'm like, oh no, I need to stop here, So what's a blessing about having coaches under you is that over time you could give the same service, same passion, but of course hand them off to your other coaches to get results there. So you can actually give more to your current clientele, But yeah, I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana. Been living here for 10 years now. I lived in Springfield, Missouri, where John's at. I played college football at Missouri State. I've lived in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica. I've been around the U.S. and learned from a ton of people, and had a lot of great mentors, which I've continued to do. Like John said, continue to go to seminars and continue to educate. Because John mentioned something. He said your clients can ask questions, and if you can't answer them confidently, they're going to lose confidence in you. An educated client is a successful client. And I think the future of coaching is more educating clients coming in rather than just directing them, because they can direct and learn and get results, but what's going to keep them getting results long term is their knowledge they accrue from their own experience of your coaching methods. So but yeah, nowadays, like I said, I'm just doing online coaching. I'm actually building a gym right now, so I'm hitting
Really?
2 gyms. Yes, so we start breaking ground in the next 2 weeks here, but my garage and my house is full of gym equipment. It's crazy, but I'm actually paying two gym mortgages right now, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really enjoying the process, and looking forward to having my own gym with memberships, training, and of course building a culture from there. So I'm really excited.
Yeah. And one other thing too, if people start to follow you, they'll notice you're also a competitive bodybuilder. So you've definitely built one hell of a physique. I always make jokes, and I'll probably make it whenever I bring you up. You're going to be on the Q&A panel at the seminar because we've got 4 people presenting, and then I've got a very specific Q&A panel that's not going to include the speakers, and you're one of the main people that are going to be up there. But you'll see I always make the joke when I stand next to you. I'm like, fuck, man, like, let's hurry up and talk and get this picture over with, because you just make me feel so inadequate, because you're probably getting close to 300 pounds that you push up there in the off season, but you trim down a little bit. Where are you at now? Where are you sitting at now?
So we do long growth phases. I mean, if you're a client of mine, and of course my coach, a growth phase is not going to be less than 6 months, because it takes a long time to be in a position to build muscle, but also keep the muscle long enough to maintain it in a fat loss phase. I mean, the biggest problem we see is competitors, they put muscle on, and by the time it comes to do a fat loss phase, they lose immediately because they never held on to it long enough there. But I've actually I finished off a growth phase in October. I've been in a fat loss phase since past about 4 months now. I went from 295, now I'm 263 here. So I actually dropped 30 pounds, about 32 pounds in those 16 weeks here. But what's really cool is after you do this enough time, so I've been bodybuilding for about 8 years now. I don't do any cardio. I just get 10,000 steps a day. I'm eating 550 carbs on training days, and I'm still about losing about 1 pound to 2 pounds a week here. So it's really fun. And it just shows that the longer you stick with this and the longer you stay compliant, the easier results you get and better the results come.
And that's going to lead up to one of our questions. We've got 4 really good questions here, and I'm going to go ahead and get to those. But one of them will be over insulin sensitivity and things of that nature, and what you just talked about. Really, I'll probably ask you some personal stuff once we get there. But let's go ahead and jump on in, man. Here's 4 questions that I know you've been asked multiple times, and this is something we can both answer. The first one is, for new coaches out there or those transitioning from Gen Pop to working with athletes, what are the key differences between coaching a bodybuilder and a lifestyle client? And you can definitely talk about this from both perspectives, Jace. In person, we both train people in person. We've done it online. But what's the main difference between a Gen Pop client and a lifestyle client for you?
Well, I think when it comes to coaching, we want to approach the client experience in a tier system, almost like climbing a ladder, you know? So when you first get onboarded, you're starting from scratch. I don't care if you're a 10-year athlete or you've never been in a gym before, you know, we have to start from the ground up and build a foundation here, you know? And how you climb each rung is really through effort, compliance and mindset, you know, that allow us to be like, okay, he's ready for next, he or she's ready for the next level here, you know. So as we climb that ladder, I would say the top ladder is being competitive in the sport, not even just bodybuilding, you know, you know, any athletic sport or strength sport there, you know. But from the very bottom, you are a lifestyle client. What's the lifestyle client? For the definition for you guys is just anybody who wants to achieve a better lifestyle habits, fill all their dietary needs and build a mindset to pattern these habits to be successful long term in their health, physique, and strength and functionality there, you know. So it could be, you know, your aunt, it could be, you know, your cousin, you know. So and what makes an athlete is, again, somebody who's chasing a certain sport depending on a specific date, you know. So for me and John specifically, it's physique enhancement for bodybuilding, but again, you know, that can full spectrum of different sports there, you know. But coaching lifestyle clients, you're really just trying to, like I said, pattern these lifestyle habits of better sleep, better mindset, a structured meal plan, a structured caloric intake, right? You know, a good functional training habits, stress management. These are 5 pillars we're trying to achieve with each client here to lay the foundation of success here, you know, because our job as coaches is to fill the gaps, you know, because clients come to us and normally they've been working out for 10 years, 15, 20 years, you know, but they have a gap somewhere. Is nutrition, is their training, is their mindset, is their stress management, is their sleep, you know? So we can fill that gap. That's the one link in the chain. It's going to take the next level there, you know? So our goal is really just to provide accountability and give direction to get there, you know? But the main difference between lifestyle and athletes is that I expect an athlete to have those foundations nailed down and patterned, right? Like if we're trying to do a bodybuilding show and we're still focused on fixing your sleep, still focused on your compliance and the meals, still focused on your training intensity, we need to take a few steps back and evaluate where the goals are, you know, because I know, John, you coach a few pros in natural and possibly, you know, in IFBB also, you know, it's not a hobby. You know, for these people, it's a lifestyle, and they've been living this lifestyle for years. So if you think you're going to get up there and be competitive with, you know, 6 months of compliance or 6 months of nailing, you know, your nutrition or training or supplementation, you're not. You get smoked. You know, so and then bodybuilding is about self mastery. So how can we master, like I said, your training, your nutrition, and your mindset every single day here? You know, because again, it's the compound effect. Not one day of hard training gets results. It's 1 year of hard training gets results, right? Not one day of being compliant gets results. It's yearly. You have to look on a year scale here. You know, so another big difference is when you're coaching athletes, it gets you get a lot more aggressive with your phases. So for a lifestyle client, if we're doing a cutting phase, you know, there's no date, right? You know, hey, you know, it's time for us to pull back and lose body fat here, okay? So we could cut for we've been a fallow phase for 6 to 8 months, you know, and like, Jace, it's a long time. But through that, we're implementing diet breaks, refeeds, you know, time off, you know, based on traveling, you know. So it's not a set of pull down the entire time we call it stress. While a competitive athlete, normally a prep is going to last anywhere from 16 to 24 weeks, you know, depending on where they're starting at here, you know, and it's very aggressive because we're not trying to lose, you know, 0.3 pounds a week. We're trying to lose 1 to 1.5 pounds a week there, you know, so the stakes are a lot higher. The standard of compliance is a lot higher, and the effort is just super high and climbs over time here, you know. As far as training goes, for training lifestyle clients, your goal is really to build foundations of strength, of injury prevention, and and movement patterns. I want to make sure that you're squatting correctly according to your femur length, your hip girdle, right? Your tibia angle here. So our goal is really just to master these foundations to get results, because them just lifting better over time is going to provide the results we need, right? While a competitive athlete, our goal is to fill the gaps in their physique. So again, I expect them to be master squats 5 years ago and squat at least 400 pounds, right? So now we got to come with different angles to attack different parts of the muscle we need to build a complete physique there. So supplementation will vary also. So I mean, from a lifestyle client, you'd be very basic with health needs, while with a competitive athlete, it's going to be more physique enhancement needs. So things that help drive energy to a cell faster, things that help provide faster recovery of muscle fibers, things that help replace ATP faster, for more reps and more endurance there. So it's definitely a wide array of differences between lifestyle and competitive athletes, but just know that it's a scale that you have to tier system that you walk each rung of the ladder at a time.
I like what you said there about coaches filling the gaps. And if I could draw a parallel here, not everyone's played basketball, but what you said about, and I would say the beginner lifestyle client and somebody wanting to get on stage, which to me is a more of an advanced or moderate to advanced type client. It's just like if you're playing basketball and you have a coach. When you first start out, the coach is going to show you how to pass the ball, how to dribble, how to maybe run some basic plays, and they're going to be hard as hell. If you did the 3-man weave for the first time, you're all over the place, right? But in basketball, you have to have those foundations done. Now, if you're going to work with a coach to play, college basketball, you better already have those foundations down. If you're trying to get to the next level and you're very passionate about being a competitive basketball player, you better already know how to do those foundations. And when you bring someone on that's newer to the gym, you're right, Jace, like we're filling those gaps and we're trying to build that foundation. So the reason I'm bringing that up is a lot of the times I will have people approach me and they say, hey, they saw a friend do a show or they see pictures and they just don't know. They have no clue. And they say, hey, I really want to compete and get on stage. And it's our job to say, hey, that's a great goal. We need to do X, Y, and Z first and spend a little bit of time, and you need to build some muscle. But if you're a coach listening, if you just bring everybody on and try and get them to stage and they're not ready, your reputation is going to suffer because they're not going to look good on stage. And I've lost plenty of clients over the years turning them away, but I'm glad I do it still to this day because it's not about the money. It's about the long game and it's about my reputation. How do you approach somebody that wants to do a show, but you just don't feel like they're ready to make that commitment yet? Maybe they've been training for a while and they've got a good base muscle. They play college football, for example, but they haven't been bodybuilding. How do you approach that client? How do you talk to them and say, hey, maybe we need a little bit more time?
Well, in the consultations, really where you lay that foundation of a realistic timeline for them, So in our consultations, coaches, we really get a scope of where you're at. Hey, how's your sleep? How's your meals? How long have you been doing this for? How's your training prowess? And based on how you answer questions, it's just extending or shortening that time frame to do a show. But any client that signs up with me, I would say the least amount of time it's going to take for us to do a show is 8 months, a year, and the top end is about 3 years. I mean, I had a girl sign up the other day. I said, hey, we're going to do a show in 2025, because that's just how far you are from where we need you to be successful here, And the problem with the coaching industry is people talk all the time like, hey, you go on social media, see the 8-week, fat losses and the, 10-week teas, whatever there, and thing is that's relevant in bodybuilding. There's coaches that take clients on with no data in the background, put on this contest prep diet them down, put them on stage. And what happens is it's irresponsible because we're not just dealing with their emotions and their ego and all stuff to win. We're dealing with their health, So if somebody comes in metabolically in not a great position, whether it be high stress, a low thyroid, low sex hormones, and you diet them down, you're making it worse. So sure, they'll get on stage and look decent, but of course they want to be muscle there or much shape there, But you're just digging a bigger hole coming out of it, and it's going to decrease our chances of our likeness to bodybuild again here. I'm not trying. John probably agree with me here. We're not trying to make good competitors. We're trying to make good people, right? And a good person is a healthy person. It's somebody who has a good mindset to be successful. Because if you're successful in your life, your relationships, your spiritual life, your finances, you'll be successful in bodybuilding, right? I mean, we know the bodybuilder Tom that has a great physique, but doesn't have a full-time job. And it's still bartending or still bouncing clubs. We know the bodybuilder that it's not kind of toxic, has a great physique, but it's kind of toxic, isn't a great person, and it shortens your shelf life as much as possible here, So our goal as coaches is really to give realistic timelines and give standards of what we need to be in our team to make successful people.
Yeah. And that to me just comes with being an elite coach. And that's exactly, you're right. And that's how you stand out for those coaches listening. That's how you stand out above the crowd, because everyone these days are a coach. There's a great example Jace just laid on how you stand out. Jace, I'm gonna go ahead and move on through, because we can, each one of these questions, we could actually do a whole podcast on each one. So I'm gonna not chime in too much. This next one's a fun one. Talk about taking care of people's health. Let's get your take on this. I'm always interested in how coaches do their refeed setups, because I've been the refeed geek forever, because I've tried every fucking which way to Sunday, from 2,000 carbs on a Tuesday during peak week to no refeeds. And I was even involved in the research that we did at University of South Florida. I got to write the diets for Dr. Bill Campbell's first refeed study. Yeah. So I'm always interested to see, okay, that doesn't mean anything. How do you do it? How do you like to do it? So here's the question. When do you guys recommend both refeeds and diet breaks during a diet phase? And what's the difference between them? So Jay, start with either one and talk about how you like to set up your refeeds, and then we'll talk about diet breaks and when to use those. So what's your take on refeeds?
So what is a refeed? So we refeed is basically so let me back up a little bit here. Okay. So there's refeeds, there's training and cardio breaks. So I would kind of classify those the same, because what they do, they mitigate stress. The only reason we would put that in is to acutely mitigate stress here, So it's not always just add more food. It could be pull back cardio and pull back training there, So, and what they do is they're quick resets to the HPA axis to pull down cortisol, reset aldosterone, which of course affects your water levels, and allow your adrenaline to operate more efficiently. So, these are hormones released from your adrenal glands that, once they're skewed, affect the whole system downstream here. Okay. Of course, there's other hormone systems and organs that get affected by stress, but the main one acutely we're going to look at are your adrenal glands. And what do adrenal glands do? They help regulate your metabolism, operate your immune system, was very important during prep, because if you get sick during prep, it's very hard to progress if you're fighting a cold for 2 weeks here. They optimize your sex hormones and your HRV and blood pressure. These are 5 pillars of success to continued health and fat loss in a fat loss phase here, but when to give refeeds, basically as coaches, we're looking at the biofeedback, so that's why we do updates weekly or bi-weekly, is because we're just trying to see a trend on your energy levels, your sleep, your digestion, your strength, your body measurements, your pictures. These are things that we see as coaches. See if we see progress or stress, and we see we kind of smell a little stress. We'll invite a refeed. A refeed could last 1 day, could last 5 days. Could, like I said, could be a cardio or activity break there. So all we're trying to do is simply acutely pull back stress, so that the client can of course make good progress, because when the body's stressed out, cortisol is high, which of course is stress hormone, which releases glucose. When glucose is high in your bloodstream, you're going to use that for fuel rather than fatty acids, right? Because of course it's more immediate source of energy. We want to free up the fatty acid, let it go to the bloodstream, and get utilized for fuel for fat loss there. So also these I hear some coaches, they pre-plan diet breaks or refeeds. Like, hey, look, we do 8 weeks diet break, 6 weeks diet break. And I think it's a great method for new coaches or people who just kind of doing their own dieting phase. But we don't want to pre-plan them, because we want to go on a needs basis, but we do want to count for them in the timeline here. Okay. So for example, if a client needs to lose 20 pounds, and I think we could lose, an average of 1.2 pounds a week, to get there over 16 weeks. Well, the likelihood of them having a smooth 16 weeks is not likely. So, hey, let's add an extra 3 or 4 weeks to have time for a refeed, diet break, or practice peak, right? So putting that in there is ideal for us. But what's a diet break? And basically a diet break is, I would say, anything over 7 days. So when you pull back completely, you pull the calories back to maintenance, you pull the training volume back to maintenance, cardio to a good place, not to cause stress, and for more than 7 days. And basically we do this when we've exhausted all resources of refeeds and breaks there. So let's say the client is stressed out, didn't improve, actually start gaining weight, it's probably time for a diet break there, right? So, and this could last 7 days, could last 2 or 3 weeks there. It depends how long it takes that client to regulate back to homeostasis there. Yeah, so you can go now, John. Sorry about
No,
that.
no, you're good. I'll talk about the refeed side of things. Refeeds, the ones I like to do are weekly, but they're small. They're just a tiny bump, and they're not really a giant jump in calories, really, so to speak. So I just started a lady the other day on our contest prep diet, and I think and I'll just say total calories because I can't remember the exact carb breakdown, but she's dieting on her low days, like most of her training days are like 1,600 calories. She's got like on her Sunday, she'll train a little higher reps. She might have 1,750, 1,800 calories. Fats are a little lower, carbs a little higher. It's just enough to boost leptin and boost the metabolism, but it's not like a fucking, hey, go to the sushi buffet and stuff like that. So mine these days are a little bit smaller, and it's to give them just a little bump in leptin in their metabolism, give them a little bit of glycogen, but not enough to interrupt fat loss. And when I wrote the book, The Flexible Fat Loss Solution, when I talked about refeeds, I like to make at least one day a week to where it's almost up to maintenance, because honestly, I don't even think it's maintenance anymore because of the things you talked about, because it drops cortisol, because you have more energy, you have something mentally to look forward to. So my refeeds aren't really big. Now, back in the day, they used to be gigantic. Because I experimented with everything, I would tell people, I used to work with Skip Hill way back in the day, who's probably the pioneer of refeeds. It was called skip loading. And I've got to give Skip credit here. Now, I don't think that's optimal for anybody, by the way. But Skip had done a hell of a job getting people shredded. He is a pioneer. He led the way for people like me to even look into refeeds. So shout out to Skip. But these days I do a little smaller ones, and it allows me to keep the weekly calories higher. So if I do a small refeed, and it just allows me to mitigate cortisol, which is the thing you keep coming back to. So we all do things a little bit different, but I like that you keep such a close eye on things. And if you notice, hey, I need one, you're not afraid to say, hey, let's pull back cardio, maybe bump food, or whatever your approach is. And that's kind of my take on it. Now, on the diet breaks, I'm curious to see how you do yours. I've got one quick story I can tell. I'm with you. I don't systematically do diet breaks. I do them when I see the client needs them, and that's the art of coaching. Coaching isn't cookie cutter. You've got to understand why to do a diet break, which Jace is about to break down. But I had a natural female. Most of my clients are natural these days. She's in her 50s, just really tough genetics, but we were getting her really close. She had about 5 more pounds to get to stage, and we were about 8 weeks out. But for 3 weeks in a row, she wasn't making any progress, and she did what you were saying. Her weight was slowly going up. Now I checked her food logs. I know her real well. She was spot on. She was doing an hour of cardio a day. She was training 5, 6 days a week. This is back when I trained people that way. This is 2015, probably. Calories are too low. I couldn't really make another adjustment. I could pull from like fats, but then you don't want to do that to a natural female too long. So anyway, my back was against the wall. So what I do is I had to talk her into doing a diet break. So I pulled cardio at 100%, so dropped an hour right out of the way. I had her take the whole week off of training, and I bumped her carbs. I only bumped them like 25 a day, but she also was getting more because she wasn't doing an hour of cardio. She wasn't training, so her body actually wasn't burning through as many calories. So it's almost like adding calories too. And what happened is, man, she lost like 3 pounds in a fucking week because cortisol just dropped. Her hunger was back because she could make more thyroid hormone. She was hungrier. And I remember 2015 was the first time I actually went all in on a diet break. Before I was like, nah, I'm just going to just keep going. And it showed me the power of them. I was a little late to the game, but that's my story. And I do those when I know somebody's 100% spot on and their back's against the wall. And I'm seeing I have to do them way more for females, and I still don't have to do them too often. But that's kind of my take, man. Give us an example, or just tell us how you like to approach diet breaks and how you use them.
Well, you said so much gold there, John. Let me try to just get this point out of the way real quick. So, John mentioned what do carbs do to help lower cortisol here? So
Yeah.
what else do carbs do to help spike leptin? So leptin is a fat burning hormone in your body, helps increase your thyroid production, and also it's going to allow us to have more energy to do more, right? It's a lot of times you see clients, their step count goes down, their biofeedback goes down. So you had a little diet, that little refeed, which, like John said, we track a weekly caloric intake, not like a daily, right? Because as long as they stay within range that weekly, we're good. So we can increase carbs pretty substantially within a day or two, or maybe 3 days, have them move more and then burn more, So, you'd be surprised in a constant prep how much you just slow down your activity. The amount of times you blink, how many times you fidget, and have that little three-day refeed almost has a mental effect for them to push harder into prep. So if they're struggling with our cardio, like John said, that week she took off, guess what? She's ready to kill it when she got back. She felt good again, because I was in the crowd with my last coach who, hey, keep digging. Keep digging, keep digging, keep digging. And sure, I got lean, but how much muscle do I lose that process? And how much harder was me to pull? And sure, I built some mental toughness there, which is great here. But it's more effective to have with the studies we have now. You mentioned Bill Campbell. Bill Campbell actually had a study. He said for a 7-week study, he had one group. Both groups died for 7 weeks. One group, they dieted evenly through the whole time, at 7 days a week, low caloric deficit there. The other group, they dieted 5 days. They had low calories 5 days and 2 refeed days there. Of course, they brought carbs up. Because of course fats don't have the same effect as carbohydrates. So they brought carbs up those other 2 days. The group, at the end of a 7-week study, both groups lost just as much weight. Okay, but the second group actually maintained 3 times much muscle mass, which is insane. Because conscious prep isn't about losing body fat solely. Sure, it's a game of conditioning, a game of leanness, but how much muscle mass you bring to the stage. And if you have a taller, senior competitor, that little bit of muscle mass could help push them to win with the shape they have or don't have. So our goal is, again, to retain muscle mass through the process of cutting, and also lose body fat there. But one way through a study we can actually implement refeeds or diet breaks program is to have two or three higher days, right? John mentioned that he had a low day, high day. It's not rarely we ever see a coach pull a client evenly through prep. Sure, if they're hyper responders, that's fine. But us carb cycling or nutrient cycling in some way, having high days, low days, that could be a 5 on, 5 off, 2 on, could be train days, could be off days. It's got to allow us to have those low adrenal resets while still facilitating fat loss here. And honestly, whenever you carb cycle and you have the higher days, that's going to provide your body with more energy, more endurance, more strength, more recovery. And the following day, if you have a low day, it's still burning that many amount of calories the following 3 days there. So if you have low days there, that's how you facilitate more fat loss without having to manipulate, without having to pull them down too hard and provide more food in a process there.
I love it, man. There's so much. And, speaking of Dr. Bill Campbell, he's going to be on the podcast at some point. So we'll dive even more into the research side of that. But here we are, you and I are in the trenches using this research and what we see in the trenches as the art of being a coach. And that's what I emphasize that because we have a lot of coaches that listen to the show. So that's the art of it. That's what I love about it, because man, if it were just fucking math, I would be walking around shredded. You know what I mean? So, and my fat ass is not, as you will see when we stand up there for the Q&A panel. But long story short, we've got 2 more good questions here. So this is the fun one, man. I know that insulin sensitivity is something I have talked about a lot for going on almost a decade now. 2015 is when I really started to dive in. Myself and Jason Theobald, and I still learn more every year. There's always more to this. So here's the question, man. I'm really excited to get your take on these. If you suspect someone is insulin resistant, or if they have insulin sensitivity issues, for most people listening, they'll recognize by that term. What are the things that you are specifically looking for that tell you that that's in play? So, insulin sensitivity and issues and insulin resistant, I see that with a lot of people more these days as I bring clients on. And I think it's likely tied to stress. Some of it's genetic. But dude, I've got plenty of skinny, quote unquote, skinny folks that have been longtime runners. They're just super stressed out. Their blood glucose is high. So what are the things that you look for when you're coaching to think, fuck, man, insulin sensitivity is an issue here. I'm not getting progress. What do you look for?
Well, first of all, insulin sensitivity or resistance isn't a look. We could relate more to the overweight body composition, or high amount of body fat. But there's plenty, like John said, plenty of marathon runners who have insulin resistance, who have bad lipid panels. So and why is insulin resistance bad is because whenever your body's insulin resistant, you have high amounts of insulin, glucose floating around your bloodstream, your body fat storage is going to be more calories going to be biased more towards body fat storage than energy or muscle glycogen there. So Next would be high inflammation, especially within the gut. It's where most of your peptides are broken down to and shoved to that cell there. So inflammation can be high, which is going to affect every. I mean, when inflammation's high, what's it do? It blocks leptin, which helps you burn fat. Next is you're going to see a skewed lipid panel. So like I mentioned earlier about triglycerides. What happens to triglycerides is that whenever you eat calories and they, of course, go to your bloodstream as glucose, if they're there long enough, they actually can convert into fatty acids, which are triglycerides. And of course, that's abrasive to your organ health and skews your lipid panel. And then not to mention the brain, the neurological effects, because it creates brain fog, and mental disorders like anxiety. And now we know that Alzheimer's is actually type 2 diabetes, right? Yep. So it has so many, like John said, we revisit it every single year. We would learn more over time and realize how important it is here, And I don't think insulin resistance high are an ongoing problem for most people in the the younger ages. But I think people who've been overweight for a long time, unhealthy for a long time with ailments, that's the ones whose cells literally just don't operate like ours. Their genetic, their DNA genome is completely different than ours. How their cells transcribe, because they're just you can do everything right. They can eat, they can train, they can do all that stuff here, but it takes so long for those cells to pull the right lever to shift gears to realize energy better. So the first thing I do when I onboard clients and look for insulin sensitivity is their blood glucose. So hey, let's get a fasted blood, let's get a baseline fasted blood glucose number here. So of course the wake up, hydrate themselves, and then test it, and that'll be one number there. But again, glucose is just one acute number, because I can test my glucose right now is 76. Well, and I test again is 75, right? So it's gonna go up and down. So seeing that trend over time as they progress in the program is ideal. But another one is blood work. So I mean that's honestly the key one there. So through blood work, we're gonna see their glucose at that time, which is more accurate than the glucometer. We're gonna see their HA1C, which is a 3-month overview of their blood glucose to test the glycation of the red blood cells. We're going to see their fasted insulin, which is really the biggest marker there. So the thing about these they're all related, because if your insulin's high enough, long enough, then it impacts your blood glucose. Because I had clients come in, their fasted insulin's at 30, their glucose is 80. It's like, oh, why didn't it go there yet? Because it hasn't impacted that yet there. So we know that if their HA1C, the glucose, and fasted insulin are all high, that they're in an insulin resistant state there. Okay, but also we'll look at stress markers, because a lot of times insulin resistance isn't just calories. Like, oh, we need to pull your carbs and do this and take this right here. I'm like, no. We need to find the root cause stressor and pull that down here. So we look at stress markers like cortisol and inflammation markers like CRP. Because inflammation causes stress in the body, which will also make your body release more glucose there. But as far as what to do first, number one is what's the biggest the lowest hanging fruit? Clean up their diet. Like, hey, look, here's your structured meal plan. Okay, here's your body having just healthy glucose spikes and dips, having your body release insulin at a healthy rate here to pull things back down and utilize the energy for storage. Next is address stressors. This be more the mindset coaching and mental side of coaching here. Like, hey, what are your top 3 stressors here? Okay, so let's identify these, and we can't stop them. Like, I can't tell somebody, hey, quit your job or divorce your husband, right? But we can get a better perspective of stress and create stress mitigating techniques for the client. Like going for daily walks, restorative yoga, some adaptogens like Cordy's that Jason sells are great too. Next, number 3 would be prescription drugs, because I think a lot of people overlook this and they don't really communicate this. A lot of times they just forget. Like they take blood pressure medication, they take birth control, they take corticosteroids temporarily, and that spikes your glucose up there. They just forget. So definitely fish around and find that out. But the last thing, like John mentioned earlier, is caffeine. Caffeine is a great drug. I mean, honestly, it's America's favorite drug, right? But when done in excess, when done for too long, and of course, if you don't titrate back and down, and of course resensitize your caffeine receptors, you're going to run into issues like insulin resistance, 100%. Anxiety, fat gain, and everything else that those adrenaline hormones stimulate there long term.
Yeah, I mean, even adrenal fatigue and things of that nature. And I'm going to sit here and people see me sipping on a Monster, but what they don't realize is I'm going to drink half this can once today and have like 80 total, which is nothing. Where before, because I love these, I call them my white trash energy drinks, because I grew up in a trailer, and if I were going to live in a trailer right now, I'd walk around with a sleeveless shirt on and drinking these all tatted up. But my point is, not to go off on a tangent, I drink half of this. 80 mgs of caffeine a day is nothing, where a lot of us are slamming pre-workout. And that's why we made our pre-workout a little lower. It's only 250 caffeine, but some people are getting 700, 800, 1,000 mgs of caffeine a day. And it really fucks them up, especially because the higher cortisol stays, the more blood glucose your body secretes out, which means more insulin to drive it down, which means the insulin receptor starts to get less sensitive. So you have to secrete more insulin, and higher insulin circulating, like you said, you see it on labs, easier it is to add fat, the harder it is to lose fat. It's just this vicious cycle. And it's definitely, I've given presentations on it an hour long, and I don't even touch the tip of the iceberg on that. But I love your explanation. I think people can take that. One thing that I really like to make sure that people remember is, you mentioned the morning glucose readings. That's a great place to start. One thing I've started to do this year, just food for thought for anyone, I've actually gone to 3 to 4 hours post-prandial, which is fancy for me. Eat a carb meal, 3 to 4 hours later, check your blood glucose, because I've got some people that they're just morning numbers. It's the dawn phenomenon, and your body starts to elevate cortisol if you're healthy, which elevates blood glucose. And it's just your body's trying to say, hey, wake up, it's time to get up. Sometimes I have people that I can't get below in the 90s. I can't get below 90s no matter what I do, but their readings 3 to 4 hours after a meal are like 78, like yours is. And I know that that's in a good place. So if you are somebody that's struggling with the morning numbers, try that 3 to 4 hours after a carb meal. It tells your body how you're processing through glucose and insulin and things of that nature. So just one other thing. Now, I bring all of that up because earlier you mentioned you do these long growth phases, you push up pretty hard in the off season. You definitely don't get fat, but because you're pounding so many carbs over a period of time, your insulin sensitivity starts to go down, and then you diet and you clean that back up. And now you're to the point you're saying that you're eating 550 carbs a day and you're losing. How crucial do you feel that this leaner physique and a better insulin sensitivity is to be able to lose fat pretty easy on 550 carbs?
If you're a bodybuilder, or just sorry, if you're a person and you're not chasing high insulin sensitivity year round, you're gonna run to a roadblock somewhere, because at the end of your growth phase reverse diet, you're gonna get to a place where you're just putting body fat on, and your gym performance sort of suffer. It's nothing worse than the place where you add 50 carbs, you get fatter and get weaker, right? But it's super key, John, because when we say insulin sensitivity, it's not just carbohydrates. It's high body processes energy in general, right? And we talk about metabolism. Metabolism basically means just how's all your cells work together to utilize energy and of course transcribe it for different functions. Because our bodies are just one sack of cells, literally, right? So we think about it that way, we're able to all right, well, look, if I eat this, it's going to do this. If I eat this, it's going to do this here, right? And really insulin sensitivity, because it just comes down to just a low inflammatory diet, which pretty much means don't eat crap, don't eat processed foods that take a long time to digest and cause inflammation. Control your stress, literally, year round. I'm probably the most even keel, consistent person I know. Honestly, yeah, Jace, how you doing? I'm great. I'm not that year round. I'm never too high. I'm never too low. And that's really the key to living consistently. Because a lot of people they get too hyped up or get too down. And it affects other places of life, but then it has physiological effects, right? Because where the mind goes, the body follows there. So if you just really hone in on your diet, control your caffeine intake, control your stressors, you're going to be in a great spot here. Okay. But again, the goal is be consistent year round. Don't have, 3 good weeks can be washed away one bad week, but guess what? Three good months can be washed away one bad week, so again, be consistent as possible.
Man, I agree so much with everything you said here. I think of an example. I just had a younger guy check in with me. He's trying to build muscle, and I'm trying to just push as hard as I can. Guy's spot on with his diet. He's got a little bit of shitty genetics on his side. He's more of an endo than he is anything else. Not a real big guy. He's like 165 pounds, 21 years old. Pushing his food, he's eating like 275 carbs a day, and he's going up, but his body fat's starting to creep up faster the last month than it did for about 3 to 4 months. And that to me is always a marker where I always come back to him. I say, hey, on a scale 1 to 10, how you doing on your diet? Are you eating off plan? Are you doing anything that I need to know about? He's like, no, man, I'm a creature of habit. He shows me his food and he's spot on. So what that tells me is he's gotten to the point where, 275 carbs isn't a lot for some people, but for some people it is a lot. For me, it's a lot. his insulin sensitivity is starting to go downhill because he's pounding that insulin receptor with for him higher carbs and a high carb day of free meal because he's a young guy. He's got to be able to stick to the plan, right?
Yes.
So what I like to do in this situation is, yeah, you know what? Go ahead, because then I want to talk about how we do an insulin sensitivity reset or a mini cut. But go ahead, man.
So let's say I'm coaching a guy who wants to build muscle or a girl wants to build muscle. We're creeping up on the on the higher end of their growth phase, right? So
Yeah.
they're a big caloric surplus. We're adding carbs, adding fats, maybe even adding protein here and there. And they start putting on body fat. My first question is, all right, well, how's your gym performance, right? Because we don't want to look at food like, hey, add food because it's been 3 weeks. All right, we want to progress. It's just that time, right? We want to look at food as our biggest performance enhancer. So every time I get a client food, I'm like, hey, look, get new PRs. Get new PRs. Hey, you have free meal, get new PR. Just PR fuel here, okay? Because we know that when your training intensity goes up and your demand of recovery goes up from your body from training so hard, that's going to be the determinant factor of where your food goes there. So make sure that if you're in a growth phase, it's easy to get lethargic. It's a lot of food, body's constantly digestion, you're feeling fat, you're feeling unmotivated. That's time to step on the gas and train really, really hard here. And I'm sure John does the same thing. My clients send me train videos. It's not every set, but a few sets a week. I'll see, hey, look, I need to push a little harder here. Like we're trying to literally get results and mitigate fat gain here. Push a little harder here. Give me 10 next time. Give me 12 next time there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I know we're getting pretty close to our time. We've got one more question, so I'm going to keep this short because I know you've got something coming up, I think, right after this. So I want to make sure I get us done in time. One more thing on the insulin sensitivity front. Do you feel like your pumps are better when you're a little bit leaner and your insulin sensitivity is improved? And I know the answer to that, but I think a lot of people don't realize is the difference that you can start to tell. You'd think when you're eating a massive amount of food and your body fat's a little bit higher, that training is a little bit better. It should be the opposite, correct? Like how do you feel now sitting at 262 or 3 compared to closer to 300 when it comes to training and pumps?
Well, I feel a sweet spot. Like I'm kind of a sweet spot right now where all day I feel kind of flat, but when I train, I just explode, because my body, like I said, is so insulin sensitive and the glycogen retention is a lot higher when I train. But one thing I have my clients do, or I do, John, is I take your GDA before I train. So I do intra workout carbs. So I take about 3 or 4, which is a commit of like 60, 80 carbs to cover that amount. So my pre-workout, which of course is hard to kill, I take that. And while I train, I have even bigger pumps because my body's more receptive to the new glycogen I'm putting in with amino acids.
Yeah. And that's something, as a bodybuilder, you definitely want to be able to feel the mind muscle connection. It's all such a system that, we're going to do a full episode over insulin sensitivity and resets here in the future. Last question, man. I'm going to change this one just a little bit. Here's the question, but here's the way I want to ask it to you. I want to be muscular and lean like someone on the cover of a magazine. And this could be for a guy or girl. As trainers, what do you tell your clients as a realistic timeline for health and physique goals? So what I want to change that to so we have more time is when you have somebody hire you and they want to look lean and have abs or how do you talk to them about maintaining a certain body fat? I think that's a better question how we can frame it because I think people get unrealistic goals, especially females. They see people dieted down, especially in an Instagram world these days. People only post their fucking shredded pictures. They don't post what they look like 20 pounds heavier because that's real life. What are your thoughts on that healthy body fat set point? So if you're going to diet someone down, how do you have that conversation with them and get them to a healthy physique, but a look that they want? That's hard, right?
Well, I think it has to be approached, educate them first that these things are done in phases. Right. So the first 6 months of us starting together, I'm not going to cut a client. Right. Like, I don't care where you say your calories were, we need to establish these foundations, build muscle to be able to earn the right to cut or lose body fat there, to look like that guy or girl will look like, So by us attacking these things in phases. So doing a growth phase, a fat loss phase, and over time. So you got to think your first fat loss phase is gonna be tough. You're not gonna know what's going on. You're gonna see some results, probably about 5% body fat there. Okay. But when you reverse back up, you only gain 2% back. Well, next time you cut, you lose another 5%. You only gain 2% back. So over time, each phase you're getting leaner, stronger, and better over time to where in 3 years, you're that person with a six-pack year round. You're that person who's able to high sensitivity at the end of growth phase. Because you earn that right there, you build the muscle to sustain that energy pathway there. So again, just explain to them that everything's done in phases and that we can get there, but it's going to take 3, 4, 5 years, depending on their compliance, effort, mindset, like I mentioned earlier. But through these phases here.
Man, I love that because we all have, and it's not because people are stupid. It's not. People just don't know. And here's the thing: a lot of coaches don't know until you've been around long enough that you kind of figure it out. I mean, fuck, I had no idea in 2009. Like, I didn't know. I just diet people down, and I'm like, man, why is everybody getting fatter after they're done? Why am I getting fatter? What the hell? We all have to learn. So it's definitely one of those things to where I think that's what separates the good coaches from the mediocre coaches, the elite coaches, is you not only know what to do, but you educate the client. And that, to me, every good coach should do that. So here, folks, listen, even if you don't know the answer, go out and search it. Things like this podcast, like our seminar, and keep talking to your clients about it. Make a game plan. Hell, try stuff, experiment. That's how we all learn, see what works and what doesn't. But it took me a while to kind of get to that when I was early on coaching. And it's still hard because here's the other wrench we can throw in this, man. Where's adherence fit in? Because that we're talking if somebody's adhering great to the plan. Shit, it's hard, man. Like, what we do is not easy, or everyone would look outstanding, right? So to me, it's one of the harder ones. Can you think of anything else, man, that we've left out? If we got a couple minutes here to wrap up, can you think of anything else that you wanted to talk about?
We're not without jumping on a totally different topic, John. But I can't add to the education though. So one thing that I'm actually in the works on right now is I'm actually working on like a video module for my clients. When they get onboarded, they're gonna get an education platform. So basically, it's be me and my coaches talking about a certain topic, whether it be realistic expectations, what is insensitivity, what is why do we eat higher carbs on training days and less carbs on off days, right? Come up with like 10-minute videos and have like a 10-question test after that. I think it'd be fun for a client because these are questions that every single client asks, right? And some of these aren't easy answers. I mean, I had a client ask me about fat loss phase. It literally took me 10 minutes to write it out to what's digestible and what they're going to comprehend, right? So if I can almost create a course where every client kind of goes through this, and it's almost like a graduation program, like, hey, look, you watch these 10 videos, take these 10 tests, and then you're ready. It's going to take all the guesswork out of coaching, and it's going to allow them to come into each phase mature and actually with good expectations. So that's one thing I'm in the works on right now, John. Almost like John Gio has J3 University. I'm taking this. I'm like, dude, everybody should do this. Like, it's not just for coaches; it's for everybody. So if I could come up with like the 1/10th version of that, so actually somebody watches it and takes a test, I think we'll be in a good spot here. So,
and that's where it starts because listen, you build a decent enough client base, you have your own audience, you have your own students, so to speak, and that's where you take something, and you never know, someday you can scale that possibly. You know what I mean? So like that's where it all starts. So I love that you're doing that. We're going to go ahead and cut out here. We will see you guys if you're listening. If you're going to be at the event, myself, Jace, our whole Fat Muscle coaching team, minus a couple that just couldn't make it because of prior commitments, but we have a giant team there. Really looking forward to it. So safe travels from myself and Jace. We're out of here. See you guys.